will help you along the way with some of the basic research. But once you get into the clinical work, that's where we need a partner. And that's when we really hand it off to the companies that have resources to push this through all those clinical validations and to push it to the market.
Welcome to the Transfer Files, inside the world of federal innovation. This is your insider's look at how federal laboratories bring groundbreaking technologies to market. I'm your host, Andrea Nelson. In every episode, we'll bring you insights and expertise from throughout the world of tech transfer. My guest today calls himself a recovering scientist who was drawn to technology transfer because it was dynamic and multifaceted. Vladimir Popov is the Chief Innovation Officer in the Center for Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research. He focuses on outreach to the cancer community and facilitating collaborations through business building, intellectual property and licensing programs, and more. Vladimir talked about what drew him to cancer research, his transition into tech transfer, and how he got the idea to create a program partnering federal laboratories with MBA students. Please enjoy my conversation with Vladimir Popov. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. Can you tell me first how you got into tech transfer from a research background?
Yeah, I feel every tech transfer professional has a different story. So mine is probably unique to my own path. But as I like to call myself, I'm a recovering scientist, right? So I trained and went to school to be a researcher, which I did. I got my PhD in cancer biology, and I've completed postdocs or two. I always was very interested in the business side of science. So I ventured out to healthcare management, came back to research, then went into, entrepreneurship and had a company along the way, but it landed in tech transfer in academic settings. And that's where I really realized that this is where kind of business side and scientific side can merge. Because when you're in the lab, you do research, you focus on a very, very specific field of research, and that's what you do. And that's great. But my personality needs a little more dynamics. And I think that tech transfer is a perfect place because you still get to be exposed to a lot of science. You learn cutting edge science, but from kind of a 30,000 feet, you see a bigger picture and applicability of science in the real world and ultimately in patients, in our case, where we work in life science. So that's how I ended up in tech transfer and then moved into the partnership business development. That's how I started at the National Lab. And now I kind of do both. I'm still exposed to a lot of science, talk to a lot of scientists, a lot of companies. So you have to keep up with what's, newest and greatest. But you also get to see the big picture, get to see things move through the pipeline, from research to, proof of concept to intellectual property to licensing through commercialization of some of these products.
Were there any particularly big areas of learning curve for you when you sort of made that transition from the lab?
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you come as a scientist, you carry that scientific training, I guess, in you. So first of all, you cannot get that deep into every single technology you get exposed to. Second thing, not every idea is going to be a commercial product. And while most of the ideas that you kind of run across or run into are novel, but some are just novel and people will publish and that's great. And some are actually applicable in a commercial world and they can be translated into a product or therapy or a drug. And it's hard for me, it was hard to get into that mode to triage basically to say, well, okay, this is great because as a scientist, scientists are curious, right? And as a scientist, you get excited about everything. And it's hard to kind of say, well, really, like this baby's ugly, right? It's you have to say it, you have to be realistic, because you don't want to pursue something that doesn't have future as a potential commercial product. So learning how to triage and learning how to recognize and push for things that are going to end up in a clinic, that are going to end up in patients or being a drug or a therapy, is something that you just acquire with mileage, I think.
Yeah. And was this area of research and now tech transfer, what drew you to cancer research?
Cancer was always I was always fascinated by disease. And I think even when I was starting grad school, I knew that I wanted to study cancer. And generally, people think of cancer as a disease. It's actually a number of diseases. It's in hundreds or thousands of different diseases. We call it a cancer, as like we would call it a disease, but it's much more complex than that. So you'll never have a silver bullet or a miraculous drug that's going to solve all cancers, that's going to cure all the cancers. So I like the complexity of it. I like the challenge of it. And kind of attacking from different sides. And cancer research has evolved over the last, 20 plus years that I've been exposed to that. When I was starting in my graduate school, immunotherapy no one really taught much of it. And you look at it now, some of the most successful therapies are immunotherapy based. So the evolution of research, the evolution of approach to therapy, and the complexity of disease is probably what really got me interested in it.
That brings me to Frederick National Laboratory, which is the youngest national laboratory, the only one fully dedicated to biomedical research, and the only national lab under the Department of Health and Human Services, because most of the national labs are under Department of Energy. So can you explain what that distinction is, what it means to be a national lab? Absolutely.
I love doing that pitch. I always have the best job in the world, because you get to tell people that there is something as amazing as a national lab that is focused on a specific thing. Like, for example, our lab. So our lab, short history, our lab existed for a while. We've been around since 1972 in one shape or the other. We've always worked under contract. We always served a contract for the National Cancer Institute and NIAID. But we grew over time to some numbers that I think we're around 2,400 employees today. So we've become a national lab in 2012, 2013. And what that means is you're still a federal lab. We're fully funded. So we're also what they called an FFRDC, or Federally Funded Research and Development Center. But the designation of a national lab really puts us on the map as a national resource. And it's an interesting relationship between the government and the national lab, is that we're government owned, but we're contractor operated. So I'm actually an employee of a company called Leidos Biomedical Research that runs the lab on a contract for the government. So government owns the lab, contractor operates it, government oversees it and funds it. Talk about government complexities, right? But the lab is very specific. Like you said, it is the only national lab that falls under Health and Human Services. It trickles down through NIH and NCI and NIAID. It is the youngest national lab because we've been, little over 10 years, 11 years in existing as a national lab. And we are fully dedicated to biomedical research. So we don't do any other work. We don't do energy, defense, or any of that. We focus on probably 2/3 of our research focus on cancer, and about 1/3 focuses on HIV, AIDS, and infectious diseases. So basically all the nasty stuff that emerges in the world, your Ebola, Zika's, COVIDs, and we play a role and support government agencies in that work, run clinical trials, do research, and so on.
And because the research is so focused because it's all biomedical, I imagine the technology, you're not dealing with the kind of range of products, like you just said, as a Department of Defense or a NASA. So what does the tech transfer process look like at your laboratory? Which probably very different than at other labs.
Right. And in life sciences in general, I call it life sciences, is that tech transfer is different because kind of the path to the product is much longer and much more expensive. I don't know about the latest numbers, but it was something, the cost of an average drug that you see being marketed on TV probably is between 1.5 and $2 billion because, failure rate is very high. The cost of actually developing it's just when you go from a basic research from, your candidate drug identification until you go through all your basic research, preclinical work to your clinical work. Clinical studies cost a lot. They're complex, and then through all the approval processes. So it's a different path than, when you have a device, let's say, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're just different processes. So for us, our technologies, as we call them, or our intellectual property, is different because it's much more earlier in the stage, right? So we make basic discoveries. So, you can license maybe a potential drug candidate from us, and we'll help you along the way with some of the basic research. But once you get into the clinical work, that's where we need a partner. And that's when we really hand it off to the companies that have resources to push this through all those clinical validations and to push it to the market. And I think it goes for every federal lab. It's really not in our mission to commercialize things. We're in the R&D business, if you will, and we like to see someone else take this to the market. So that's why the partnership with the private sector, with the industry, is very important for us.
What are the big areas of focus or big promising areas for the upcoming future in your laboratory?
Well, I would say if we were to look at, for example, specific technologies, I think, artificial intelligence plays a big role, obviously, in every aspect of our lives these days. So it does in research, right? We're looking applications of AI and ML and neural network in drug discovery, in diagnostics, in imaging. So that's certainly a big part. I think there are also kind of new emerging trends that we are always trying to keep up and contribute and work with the companies that emerge in those areas. If you look at things like non-invasive monitoring, or liquid biopsies, things you can test from blood, so you don't have to poke and prod people all the time, and you can do it in a real time. Those are important advances, and many others. Obviously, we're a big lab, and like I said, we do everything from very basic research through preclinical, through supporting clinical work. So we like to stay at top. We like to do unique things. Also support novel technologies and new technology developments where our expertise can really be put to work.
I'm going to shift now to the FLC. How did you get involved in FLC? Because now you're very involved at this point.
Yeah, how I got involved. I guess I came to Frederick National Lab about 8 years ago, and kind of immediately I was told about FLC from some of my colleagues and some of government colleagues. So I started attending meetings. We had regional meetings, which were great for me because I really got to learn who other players in our region are, right? And then started attending was also national meetings, and then you learn how big of a beast really is, the whole federal world. So a couple of years of that, I learned that there's a lot of benefits. For me personally, you kind of learn how other people's do things, and specifically for our lab, because we are unique, as you said, we are the only national lab here on the health and human service side, and that is fully dedicated. But there's still a lot of overlaps. There are a lot of things that you can learn from how other labs function. And if someone has done it and figured it out, there's no need for you to figure it out all over again. Just go and ask them. That's why this community is very good. So a couple of years after I initially joined FLC, I ran for a regional coordinator position, and I am serving my second term actually now as a regional coordinator. That means I'm also on the executive board, and I'm helping kind of with the FLC strategy and programs that FLC is putting to support the federal labs and some of the programs that we also designed to help tech transfer.
And one of those programs that you really had the idea for, as I understand it, was our Flex program. So can you explain what Flex is and how that idea kind of came to mind and how the program has come to be?
Sure. So let me define FLEX, right? FLEX stands for Federal Lab Education Accelerator. And the idea is to connect federal labs and relevant stakeholders, in our specific case, business schools that teach entrepreneurship and commercialization. The idea came from, to be honest, from the experience and from talking to both sides of that equation. And as I assumed the role of the regional coordinator, I really wanted to see what are the pains from the labs in our area. So my deputy regional coordinator and some support from our lab and I, we met with a number of labs, a couple of dozen labs from our region, and there was a theme that really kind of kept recurring, where there was not a lot of bandwidth in some of the labs, especially smaller labs that don't have a lot of folks in tech transfer offices. There wasn't a sufficient bandwidth to do proper tech assessment, to look at, what is our market, what are our customers, who should we target to license these technologies. At the same time, I was doing my MBA, and I was taking a class that was dealing with that. Actually, the class was called Discovery to Market, and the class was basically pairing up students who want to learn how to take technologies, to learn about what technologies are, to learn about licensing, and then how to take them through, licensing and startup formation and commercialization. So we thought, great, these are all great ideas, and let's just do this on a bigger scale. So what we did is we approached a number of labs and asked them for a handful of, good technologies that they would like to be assessed by business students. And we created a FLEX portfolio. And then we approached a number of business schools and told them, hey, did you know that there are so many federal labs and really cool technologies that are available for your students to study? And basically pair them up. And the unique thing is that FLEX portfolio is very heterogeneous. That's not just doesn't just focus in one area. It really has everything from cancer to drone and everything between. And on the other end, you have a number of different schools that all teach entrepreneurship, commercialization, or variations of. And basically what happens is that you have a constant source of students on one end, because you're working with multiple schools, and you have constant source of technologies on the other end from multiple labs, and there is always matching. And there is active management of the program, which is also a key thing. So we have an active FLEX program manager, and that helps a lot because it keeps these wheels turning, right? And makes it basically to make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped. And for these complex relationships, this is very important. So students benefit from working with the labs. They probably didn't know they existed. Mm-hmm. They work with tech transfer managers. They work with inventors very often, and labs get these assessments from very smart, motivated students, and can use this information and to maybe better position their technologies to reach out to the right customers, right licensees.
It occurs to me as you're saying that a lot of the conversations I have with people in tech transfers, in federal tech transfer, it sounds like one of the big challenges is letting the business community know that federal labs are there and ready to partner. And so now you've got this whole generation of MBA students coming up with that knowledge, with that experience, that familiarity.
Right. And that was kind of an idea, right, to identify a relevant group, to relevant stakeholders, right? And I mean, if you look at it, you want to target these, aspiring entrepreneurs, if you will, and you want to let them know that labs exist, and maybe they'll license the technology from Federal Lab while they're in the program. Maybe they won't, but they'll know that the labs exist, and if ever they are in the need of technology or support, they will know. They'll have a good knowledge of the federal world, and that'll be one of the resources they can use.
The FLEX program actually recently had a company that came out of it, which was sort of a bonus. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited about that. When we were starting Flex program, it was really a pilot in our Mid-Atlantic region. And I didn't mention that we piloted it for about a year and a half, and then really showed that, a couple of business schools participated in several labs. And then we expanded it to the national level, and we're growing the program now. So I think we have close to 15 business schools we work with and over 20 federal labs. So we have over 100 technologies in the Flex portfolio. And, people always say, well, what are the benefits? Do you have any KPIs? And I said, well, program is relatively new. I think Flex been running for 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years at this point. And we did have many good outcomes. We had, students getting so excited about their deliverables, where they wrote the TED Talks. Students were offered jobs from federal labs at the end of the semesters. And people always asked us, well, are there any companies being formed? And I said, well, that doesn't happen overnight. You can't just form a company after one semester. But actually, we do have a company, and that's a great success. There's a company that was started as a result of Flex. There were students from University of Maryland Smith Business School that were assessing this technology from USGS. And they obviously did an amazing job, and they really believed in it enough to license it out from USGS and to start a company. So we have our first company, I hope first of many to come, because it shows that basically this model works. And, companies are just one of the benefits. Like I said, great. That's a perfect benefit, right? Mm-hmm. But even the deliverables are very relevant. Labs are happy with the deliverables from other schools, from other students, and it helps them, like I said, with that targeted outreach for licensees.
Are there any more sort of updates or things coming up within Flex that we should know about?
Well, we are in the process of hiring a full-time Flex program manager. Like I said, this started off from our lab. It was three of us. It was Claudia Haywood, who's a deputy regional coordinator, Amanda Corbell, who serves as a program manager, Flex program manager right now, helping run the things at myself. And we are hiring FLC approved to approve the funds to actually hire a full-time person to be a Flex program manager. We're very excited about that because we are running into the bandwidth issue at this point, because we do have full-time jobs that we're committed to doing. But we, at the same time, we want to see Flex grow. And we have a lot of interest from the labs and from the schools. I think people recognize the benefits of joining Flex and for participating in the Flex program. So we're very excited to hire this full-time person so we can really expand the program, add more labs, add more schools, and then see what comes next, right? And we've had some conversations about maybe pairing up with some venture groups or where maybe someone could put teams together. Because if you think about it, we have a number of technologies now that have been assessed multiple times. And we have these folders or buckets, as I call them, with multiple assessments from multiple different schools. And if you're a venture group, investment group, if you're an entrepreneur, and you just kind of look at those buckets and say, well, look at all this work that someone else already did, and look at this cool technology that 5 out of 6 groups thought that there is future for it. Why don't I just license it out? Or why don't I just put a team together and put some seed money into it and see where it goes? So we are in conversations with a few groups to maybe partner with someone and to start that approach, because that's the next step. And the Flex is basically, I think the success of Flex is because of the active management, because of the active involvement from our side as people who came up with Flex, as well as academic and federal side. So we want to keep that dynamic. We want to keep that active management of the program and come up with the next step, and not just say, great, these technologies were assessed, now let's put the assessment on a shelf and let's move next. Right,
which kind of defeats the purpose of tech transfer in the first place.
Right.
Well, it definitely sounds like you've hit on something with this program for it to have grown so quickly. If there's anyone listening who would like to get involved, maybe who's with a lab or with a school or something else, who should they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. They're more than welcome to contact me. There is a Flex page on the FLC website. There is also an email address there. They'll get to me in either case, either to me or to Amanda. And we're happy to talk to anyone. Like I said, we're very, and no pun intended, we're very flexible with the program. We've had business students evaluate this. We have MBA students. Most of the participants are MBA students, but we've had undergraduate approach us. We've had people who wanted to do capstone projects. We'll entertain any thought, and we're open to kind of branching out. We're really not set in stone, but I think the idea as an idea seems to be working, and people are excited. So we're accepting other labs to join. We're accepting other schools to participate. So just let us know.
Excellent. Well, Vladimir Popov, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
If you want to find out more about the FLEX program, visit federallabs.org, click on Engage at the top, and click on FLEX program. You can also find the link on the page for this episode on the FLC website. And that full-time position as project manager for the program is now open and posted online. You can also find that link on the episode page. The startup that came out of the FLEX program is EviroWell, a clean water company. You can find them at EviroWell.org. Thanks again to Vladimir for sharing his time and insights. And thanks to you for listening. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in to the Transfer Files, your insider's look at federal tech transfer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more episodes exploring how hundreds of government laboratories and countless industry partners are driving innovations that shape our lives.